Religions. Islam is not compatible with human rights, women's rights, freedom of expression and democracy. There is no way in a real democracy that separation of religion and state can be neglected. There is no way we can enjoy human rights if we allow religious rules to regulate society. Freedom of expression must include the right to be different and to offend people, a fact most of the people in many countries do not know and do not believe. Without the right to offend, freedom of expression cannot exist. And without freedom of expression, a democracy cannot be a true democracy. As I grew up, I became aware of women's human rights. I believe that Islam does not consider a woman to be a separate human being. Man was the original creation and womankind was created secondarily for the pleasure of man. Islam considers a woman as a slave, a sexual object. Women's role is to stay at home and to obey her husband. Women are considered weak, so they should be taken care of. Their body and mind, their desire and wishes, their rights and freedom must be controlled by men. Islam treats women intellectually, morally and physically as inferior. In marriage, Islam protects the rights of men and men only. The Quran gives total freedom to man, saying, "Your women are as your field, go unto them as you will." Women are told to run to their husbands wherever they are, whatever they do, it is their duty. The hadith says that two prayers that never reach the heavens are, number one, those of the escaping slaves, and number two, those of the reluctant women who frustrate their husbands at night. Islam considers women psychologically inferior. Women's testimony is not allowed in cases of marriage, divorce and hudud. Hudud are the punishments set by Islamic law for adultery, fornication, adultery against a married person, apostasy, theft, robbery and so forth. If any woman is raped, she has to produce 4 male witnesses to the court. If she can't, there is no charge against the rapist. In Islamic law, the testimony of 2 women is worth that of 1 man. In the case in which a man suspects his wife of adultery or denies the legitimacy of the offspring, his testimony is worth that of 4 witnesses. A woman does not have the right to charge her husband in a similar manner. Women are not allowed to inherit the property on equal terms with their brothers. In the case of inheritance, Allah says, "A male shall inherit twice as much as a female." And after all the rights and freedom, after obtaining all the sexual pleasure and having the pleasure of being the master, Allah will reward men with wine, food, and 72 virgins in paradise, including the wives they had on the earth. Allah said, "They relax on luxurious furnishing, and we match them with beautiful virgins. Near them shall be blushing virgins with large, beautiful eyes who will be like hidden pearls." And what is the reward for the pious woman? Nothing. Nothing but the same old husband, the same man who caused her suffering whilst they were here on earth. As I grew up, I kept observing the condition of women in our society. My mother, for example, was a perfect example of an oppressed woman. She had been given into marriage when she was but a child. And she was a good student in school, but she was not allowed to continue her studies. My grandfather and my father did not want her to study, for what they wanted was for her to be a good housewife, a good mother, a good caretaker. In our house, I grew up with much fear, as I had to keep inside my heart all my desire for freedom and curiosity for what was happening in the outside world. As a result, I developed a passion for reading books, and I had another passion to write poetry. Growing up, I had to maintain the belief that girls certainly must be inferior to boys. For boys could play in a big field, whereas girls had to play with their dolls in a corner of the house. My brothers could go anywhere they wanted, could watch any games, could play anything they wanted to play. I could not. My sister couldn't. I was told that girls were not made for such activities, that their role was to stay home, learn how to cook, make beds, clean the house. My mother was not the only woman who was oppressed, for I saw that my aunts, my neighbors, and other acquaintances who were playing the same roles, and they too were oppressed. In our minds, torture of women is not oppression, but rather is tradition. We become accustomed to tradition. As I grew up, I realized that I was a part of that tradition, and also that I was likewise being oppressed the same as my female classmates and later my female patients. I realized that whether women are poor or rich, beautiful or ugly, they have blue or black or brown eyes, they have white, black or brown skin, they are unmarried or married, illiterate or literate, all are oppressed. Everywhere women are oppressed, and all because of male-devised patriarchy, religion, tradition, culture, and customs. Nobody told me to protest, but I developed a strong feeling that it was important to fight against oppression. Nobody asked me to shed a tear, but I did. When I started writing prose that was published weekly in the newspapers, I found that my protests attracted the attention of readers, that people either hated me or they loved me. One by one, my books got published. However, those who hated for what I wrote organized demonstration against me, and people began protesting by marching through the streets. In 1992, at a national book fair, my books were publicly banned, and I was thrown out of the event. I was not even allowed to visit the book fair anymore because the fair's leader said my books were causing the problems. In 1993, I returned, but this time the fundamentalists and angry mob assaulted me publicly, breaking into the bookshop where my books were kept. The government then confiscated my passport, asking me not to write anymore if I hoped to keep my job as a medical doctor in a public hospital. In protest, I quit my job. My passport, however, was not returned until a year later, when an international human rights campaign outside Bangladesh's borders successfully pressured the government. I continued writing. In my poetry, prose, and essays, novels, I have defended women and minority communities that are being oppressed. I cried loudly for equality and justice, justice for all people, whatever their religion or gender. I spoke loudly upon behalf of secularism. I spoke against any religious laws in which women are oppressed. My books got banned by the government. In our society, I have witnessed that women are flogged, they are stoned to death, women are raped, are accused of permitting the rape, and the rapists are set free. Women have been suffering from trafficking, from slavery, from all sorts of discrimination. Men have thrown acid on women's face and then walk away as happy men. For a typical couple, the most unwanted thing is a female baby. If a female baby is born, either the wife is forced to get divorced or for her crime of having given birth to a female, or else the wife must spend her life with disgrace. By writing books, I wanted to do something constructive. I wanted to help women understand that they are oppressed but must not be oppressed. I wanted to encourage them to fight for their rights and freedom. My voice, however, gave women the chance to think differently. That did not make the religionists or the male chauvinists happy. As a result, the fundamentalists took the stand of absolutely refusing to tolerate any of my views. They objected to a woman breaking her chains and becoming free. And they could not tolerate my saying that the Quran is out of place, out of turn. and that secular law with the uniform civil code for women is an absolute necessity. The fundamentalists issued fatwa against me and set price on my head. They broke into newspaper offices, sued my editors, publishers, and me. They demanded my execution by hanging. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the street. I think they commit ultimate blasphemy by thinking that they need to protect their God, rather God should protect them. They called general strike all over the country, demanding that I be killed. Countrywide violence was executed by the fanatics. The government, instead of taking action against them, took action against me. The government of Bangladesh filed a case against me, charging that I had hurt the religious feelings of the people. I had no other alternative but to go into hiding. While in hiding, I was fortunate to receive the support of the Western democratic governments, writers' organization, and human rights activists. They literally helped to save my life. I was absolutely certain that I would be killed, for every day I saw mobs of people demanding my death. Police looked everywhere for me, knowing that the fundamentalists wanted me dead. Anyway, I survived, and finally in 1994, I was forced to leave my country. Since then, I have been trying to go back to my country, but I am not permitted to return. In the meantime, many of my books are banned in Bangladesh. I have written more than 30 books, and cases have been filed against me in order to ban many of my other books. A Bangladesh court sentenced me to 1 year in prison for having written what I did. My crime was that I said it is dangerous to follow the religious scripture in this modern world. All the religious scriptures, including the Quran, are out of time and out of place. My crime was that I said we need no religious law, no Muslim law, no Hindu law, no Christian law, no Jewish law. It's not easy to eliminate oppressive religious system, but we can at least try to make a change. Both the Judeo-Christian Bible and the Quran clearly accept and condone slavery. Jesus explicitly tells slaves to accept their roles and obey their masters. But no one in the world today would defend chattel slavery in any public forum or allow it to exist under any legal code. Neither fundamentalist Christian nor Orthodox Jews talk about animal sacrifice or slavery. Even in those countries in which Sharia law is practiced, where stoning for adultery and amputation for stealing are legalized, no legitimization of slavery is ever mentioned. Polygamy and concubinage are clearly accepted in the Old Testament, but nowhere in Judeo-Christian world are either of these practices actually legalized. Thus, the insistence on the continuation of practices which denigrate, oppress, and suppress women under the guise of scriptural reference is a hoax. Such practices could and should be delegitimized, just as chattel slavery has been delegitimized. I think that humankind is facing an uncertain future. The probability of new kinds of rivalry and conflict looms large. In particular, the conflict is between two different ideas, secularism and fundamentalism. I don't agree with those who think the conflict is between religions or between the East and the West. To me, the conflict is basically between rational, logical mind and irrational, blind faith. To me, this is a conflict between modernism and barbarism. While some strive to go forward, others strive to go backward. This is a conflict between innovation and tradition, between those who value freedom and those who do not. I have been writing about women's rights and freedom, but my freedom of expression has been continuously violated by the authorities. I have not been able to reach the readers of my country. All parts of my memoir and other books have been banned in my country. My autobiography, I realize, is not just my life story. It is the same story that thousands of women know about. It tells how women live in a patriarchal society that possesses hundreds of traditions in which girls and women suffer. I have looked back into my childhood days and described the life of being a female child, told how I was brought up, explained that I had privileges that many others didn't have. I was able to study and become a medical doctor, something which thousands of girls cannot even dream about. I wanted to show where and how I grew up and what made me think differently, what made me do things differently. It is important to give other women some strength to revolt against the oppressive system that I grew up under and which still continues to oppress them. I told the truth. I expressed everything that happened in my life. Normally it is taboo to reveal rape or attempted rape by male members of one's family. Girls shut their mouth because they are terribly ashamed. But I did not shut my mouth. I did not care what people would say to me or to my family. I know well that many women feel that I am telling their untold stories too. We, the victims, should cry out loud. We need to be heard. We must protest loudly and demand our freedom and rights. We must refuse to be shackled, chained, beaten, and threatened. If women do not fight to stop being oppressed by a shameful patriarchal and religious system, then shame on women. Shame on us for not protesting, for not fighting. Shame on us for permitting a system to continue to persist that will traumatize our daughters. My story is not a unique one. My experiences have unfortunately been shared by millions of fellow sufferers. In my book, I cried for myself. I also cried for all the others who have not been able to enjoy the productive life of which they are capable and which they most assuredly deserve. We who are women must no longer remain solitary, crying softly in lonely places. My secular humanist friends, we know that many people say that Islamic fundamentalists kill infidels, or they want to kill infidels or non-believers, but in the name of Islam, but it is not real Islam. Yes, we hear that Islam does not support the killing of innocent people. Allah never advocates killing. The killings are the work of a few misguided individuals at the fringe of society. Islam, the real Islam, is against violence. Islam means peace. Islam means tolerance. But is this true? Does Islam really preach peace, tolerance, and non-violence? Those Muslims who perpetrate crimes in the name of Islam think differently. They believe that what they do is a jihad or a holy war. They say that killing the non-believers is mandatory for every Muslim. Those who blow up their bodies to kill the people of different faith or infidels do so because they think they will be rewarded in paradise. They hope to be blessed by Allah, eat celestial food, drink pure wine, and enjoy sex with 72 virgins. Are they completely misguided? Let's see what the Quran really teaches. The Quran says, kill the non-believers wherever you find them. 2:191. Murder them and treat them harshly. 9:123. The surah number. The Quran says that all those who disbelieve in Islam will be thrown into hell. They are filthy, untouchable, impure. And Muslims are ordered to fight the non-believers until no other religion except Islam is left. It prohibits a Muslim to be a friend to a non-believer, even if that non-believer is the father or the brother of that very Muslim. It says that the non-believers will go to hell and will drink boiling water. It asks the Muslims to slay or crucify or cut off the hands and feet of the non-believers, that they be expelled from the land with disgrace, and that they shall have great punishment in the world hereafter. The Quran says, those who invoke a God other than Allah not only should meet punishment in this world, but the penalty on the day of judgment will be doubled to them. For those who believe not in Allah and His Messenger, He has prepared a blazing fire. 48:13. There are many more. Apologists of Islam often say, you are confusing Islam with Islamic fundamentalism. The real Islam has nothing to do with violence. True, there may be moderate Muslims, but Islam itself is not moderate. And I do not think there is a difference between Islam and Islamic fundamentalism. In this wide world, I have no country to call my home. The country where I was born and raised has forsaken me. I am left with memories of a land and people that are intrinsic parts of my being, whose language and culture molded me. That country was Bangladesh. When I was forced to leave Bangladesh, free-thinking intellectuals from the West stood by me. I then moved to Europe. It has been 17 years now that I have not been allowed to return to my country. Even when my mother was on her deathbed, the Bangladeshi government told me I could not return. A few years after that, when my father lay dying, I begged, pleaded and cried to be allowed to see him, if only for 2 days. The government of Bangladesh refused to permit me entry. For a decade, I wandered from one European country to the next. I sought a home but found none. I felt like a foreigner everywhere, an alien in the truest sense. I always wanted to return home. Since I knew that was not possible, I wanted to go to India. I could at least get a taste of home in India. But India has kept her doors firmly shut for 6 years. When finally I was given the permission to go, I did not waste a moment. I eagerly chose India's state of West Bengal as my new home. But when I was physically attacked by Muslim fundamentalists in an Indian state, instead of taking action against the fundamentalists, the government took action against me. I was kept under house arrest by the government of West Bengal for months. Not only that, I was repeatedly asked to leave the state and preferably the country. And then in November 2007, a group of Muslim fundamentalists organized a violent protest against my stay in India. I was thrown out of West Bengal, the state that had been my home for years. It is absolutely amazing that no action was taken against those who had indulged in this violence, who burned vehicles on the street and who put a price on my head. Instead, it was the victim who was tortured. Finally, the central government of India took charge of me. They put me again under house arrest. For months, I experienced an inhuman and miserable existence. The government of India pressured me to leave the country. But where was I to go? If I could have gone back to Bangladesh, I would have. I did not prefer choosing to live in one of the Western countries. India, which prides itself on being the world's largest democracy and allegedly secular state, could not shelter me. They could not give shelter to a person whose entire life has been spent in the cause of secular humanism, a person without a land or a home, who regarded India as her home, and who, as a Bengali writer, wanted to live in a Bengali environment surrounded by her own language and culture. Was this too much to ask for? I was amazed that not any political party, organization, or institution protested against the way in which I had been treated. Unfortunately, today in India, If one is to be liberal, one must be a little pro-Islam. One must not criticize Muslim fundamentalists even if they issue fatwa against women or writers and set price on their head. A liberal Indian must not talk against a Muslim because Muslims are a minority in the country and because a minority could be oppressed by the majority community, so all Muslims should be defended, whatever their crime. If Muslim fundamentalists want to enact Muslim laws that are definitely anti-women, liberal Indians appear to appreciate those demands in the name of multiculturalism. The problem of India is that all the political parties appear to be having a Muslim appeasement policy. Muslims number 25% of the population in India, and the numbers are increasing rapidly. Politicians are running after Muslim votes. They push for the building of mosques, the Muslim prayer halls, the madrasas, the Quranic schools. Just a year ago, 15,000 people hit the street of Karnataka, state of India, burned the towns and killed 2 people. The fanatics burned down newspaper offices and curfews were imposed in few towns of Karnataka. All because a local newspaper published an article of mine about burqa, the Islamic veil. There was no debate possible on this issue. Instead, the fanatics used it as an issue to destroy property in the name of Islam. It was a mayhem of intolerance. I wrote in the article that burqa or headscarf or veil is a symbol of oppression, and even though Islam prescribes it, women should not wear it. We can see ignorance reaching such heights that it does not hesitate to take lives of people. The most tragic thing is that in the largest democracy of the world, it is an accepted idea that there should be a limit to freedom of expression. The question of limitation is very much related to criticism of Islam. Islam has been largely exempted from the critical scrutiny applied to other religions. I have been fighting for freedom of expression for years and paid a high price for it. In India, women have been victims of female feticide, dowry murder, bride burning, gang rape, slave trade, sexual slavery, domestic violence, etc. 50 million women are missing in India. Recently, India became the world's 4th most dangerous country for women. I'm trying my best to fight all kinds of discrimination against women by raising awareness. There has been Semitization of Hinduism and the rise of Hindu fundamentalism to oppose Muslim fundamentalism. Is it the way to oppose them? I definitely do not think so. An eye for an eye is never a solution to any problem. People need to get secular education to become enlightened, tolerant, rational, peace-loving people and believers in human rights, women's rights, secular humanism and democracy. India needs to have an uniform civil code based on equality and a strict separation of state and religion. India needs more science schools instead of religious schools, more scientific academies instead of temples and mosques. Only then will it slowly become a modern state, free from religious bigotry, obscurantism and fanaticism. India's biggest problems which need to be fought are poverty, corruption, women's oppression, superstitions and casteism. By supporting women's rights everywhere, I have criticized all kinds of religions, tradition, cultures and customs, but to my surprise I am labeled as being anti-Islam. This has led to some people saying that I am a Muslim hater. But they are wrong. By no means am I a Muslim hater. I always stand beside oppressed people. I stood beside Muslims when they were oppressed in Gujarat in India, in Palestine and in Bosnia. I defended their rights to live, just as I stood beside the Hindus who are oppressed in Bangladesh and by the Christians in Pakistan. To me, their religious identity is not important. I consider them as human beings. Nobody should be oppressed because of her or his belief or non-belief. I have always stood for this. The criticism I make of the religions I do by writings. I do not go to harm the believers physically with the sword. No, I do not believe in violence. The fanatics never accept the idea to have a dialogue or debate with me or write articles or books opposing me. They come to kill me, for they are convinced by their belief in their religion that an apostate must be killed. Still, people like to believe that Islam is a religion of peace. But since my childhood, I have witnessed the opposite. I believe no country can become civilized without criticizing the dogmatic practices of its religions. Without separating state and religion, no state or society can become modern. Should Islam continue to be untouchable? Many Western intellectuals who are enjoying secularism in their own country are not agreeing to criticize Islamic oppression of women for fear it might hurt the religious sentiments of Muslims. But I ask, should it remain how it is? And should women continue to suffer? Without criticism of Islam, it would never possible for Islamic countries to separate state and religion, never possible to have a secular education instead of a Quranic education, never possible to stop Islam-based politics. And if such didn't happen, Islamic states would remain in darkness forever. Women would not enjoy the right to live as human beings. Like India, even in the West, the fear of offending Muslims and the wider Islamic world has kept Islam away from the type of critical scrutiny applied to other religions. In the West, people are scared of the Muslim radicals, but at the same time unsure of themselves. They do not want to be seen taking a critical stand that might project them as anti-Muslim and betray their liberal traditions. It is unbelievable to see the amount of energy we spend to protect individual Muslims from questioning the unethical social practices of Islam. If we want to help the Islamic world, we must help Islam go through a similar enlightenment process that other religions have gone through by questioning the inhuman, unequal, unscientific, and irrational aspects of religion. If an Islamic society is not capable of checking the rise of fundamentalism within itself, are we then to assume that the notion of a moderate or progressive people in Muslim society is nothing but a pretense? There is a popular belief that Islamic fundamentalists are just a minority and that most Muslims are moderate. How many moderate Muslims have opposed the numerous fatwas that fundamentalists throughout the world have been handling out? How many moderate Muslims have opposed the heinous acts of cruelty that have been perpetrated on women by fundamentalists? I am a Bengali. I have no right to live in Bangladesh and West Bengal, the lands where my fellow Bengalis live. I am not only banished from those lands, I am also banned and blacklisted. Publishers do not dare to publish my books, and editors of newspapers and magazines do not have courage to publish my articles. And now the problem is not limited just in Bengal anymore. The problem is in the other parts of the subcontinent too. But this is my life. I am a stranger in my own country, Bangladesh, and a stranger in neighboring India, and a stranger in the West. Where can I go? Nowhere. Exile for me is a bus stop where I am waiting for bus to go home. Still, I don't feel any home, any country, my country. It's a hopeless, helpless feeling to be homeless, truly homeless. But I have a home. I believe I have a home. A home that consists of a family of people, men as well as women, who bravely oppose the forces of darkness and ignorance. Those are my true home. The hearts of people are my home and my only safe haven, my shelter, my only refuge. There is no place in this world that I can't call my home. But the people who support me, sympathize with me, and express solidarity with me, they are my home. They are my country. The love I receive from atheists, freethinkers, secularists, and humanists is my home. the love I receive from you, that is my home. I do not regret what I have done so far. I do not regret anything that I have written. Come what may, I will continue my struggle against all the extremists, fundamentalists, intolerant forces without any compromise until my death. I am all the more committed to my cause. Thank you.
We'll take our coffee break now and we'll return here at 11:35. Thank you very much.